This is Michael Kenworthy from Return of the Living Dead Part 2, and you're listening withoutyourhead.com.
All right, and we're back here at Without Your Head Horror Radio. I'm Nasty Neil, along with my right-hand man.
That would make me Jittery John, I believe.
Oh, man, he's so jittery.
I'm jittery. Very jittery.
Troy cannot be here with us this evening. He's got double hernia, but hopefully he'll be okay, and he'll be back next week. But right here with us, we've got Michael Kenworthy. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. It's pretty awesome. Now, a lot of people know you as Jesse from Return of the Living Dead Part 2.
That's right.
And you're going to be at the Days of the Dead Horror Convention along with us. And you can check out all the information right on our website's big banner at the top. You can click it, or you can go to daysofthedead.net. And that's July 1st through the 3rd, Indianapolis, Indiana. And apparently this is your first convention appearance?
It sure is. The only other thing I've done is I went to a book signing in Burbank, California about a month ago, and I was shocked. About 1,000 people showed up, and about 600 of them wanted my autograph, and it really surprised me. I had no idea.
Is that the reason why you haven't done them? You just didn't think people would be interested, or was there any other reason?
Yeah, I didn't really know much about it. After I went to college, and after college I got into technology, and I didn't really look back at acting. And I didn't really join Facebook or get on the social media. And when I did join Facebook, which was just around Thanksgiving, I got approached by Bill Philpott, and he contacted me. And I finally said, hey, who is this guy? And apparently he'd been looking for me for years because he have all these conventions, these horror conventions going on, and people would like to see Jesse. Mm-hmm. And I was surprised. I was shocked. I hadn't heard about it. I didn't know people still remembered it. I thought I was the only one that loved all these movies from the 80s. But apparently there's a lot of people out there that just love it. So I'm all about it. Mm-hmm. And because of him, I went to the book signing, and now I'm going to do as many of these conventions as possible. Because if someone's a fan of this, that's great. Yeah. I'm all about it.
So you said, you yourself are a fan of those movies from that era?
I am. I love them. I always have been. Ever since I was a little kid, I loved horror movies. And then when I had the opportunity to be in this one, it was, I of course wouldn't tell them at the time, but I would have done it for free. Just the idea of being around all the special effects and the zombies alone I would have paid them to let me do it.
Yeah. Now, had you seen the original one before you took the role?
No. I hadn't seen the original one because it had nudity and whatnot, but I did as soon as I got the part, and I watched it. But I hadn't seen the original of that movie, though. I had seen other ones, and I had been scared a few times. It made my parents a little leery of letting me watch other horror films.
Yeah. How did you get the role?
It was at that point, it was a typical casting. I think I went on 8 auditions over next to MTM Studios in Studio City. And it was down to me and somebody else, and they just finally chose me. And I'm not exactly sure what the tipping point was, but it eventually just came down to me and one other guy, and I got the job. Mm-hmm. And it was great.
Now, actually, before we went live here, you were telling us about a box you have. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but did you keep any props from Return of the Living Dead 2?
I actually kept 2 zombie masks for about 10 years, and I kept them in a box. And they slowly disintegrated. And eventually, they weren't something you could touch or hold. I guess I should have kept them airtight because they just eventually fell apart and they just became trash.
Yeah.
So other than that, I have the original script with all the notes and the revisions and, the highlighted sections. But that's about it. When I did the Blob the following year, I did keep a lot of pieces of the Blob, though. That was pretty cool. They freeze-dried the Blob at the end of the movie, and I collected a lot of those pieces.
Really? That's pretty cool.
Yeah. It was really cool. They used some sort of, salt and water and food dye to make this hard, rock candy. And that's what the Blob turned out to be in the end of the movie.
I wonder if it's edible.
Yeah, right? Let's not find out. After all these years and all the times I've moved, let's not find out.
Yeah. You plan on bringing any of that stuff along with you to the Days of the Dead?
Yeah, why not? I'm going to bring it all. When I went to this book signing, Bill had encouraged me to come to the book signing just to see what this was all about, and the book signing was for the Return of the Living Dead book that came out, and I was shocked. I mean, there were people that came up to me that knew everything about me. They knew even commercials I had done that I thought never aired, and I was shocked. There were people that would shake my hand, and they'd look at me in the eye, and they'd be like, I am so pleased to meet you. And I had no concept that people felt that way.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't know, it made me feel good, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And self-esteem aside, just the fact that I can make someone else feel good by shaking their hand and saying hello, right on. I'm all about it.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that some of the other people, not to mention names in the movie, have tried some of the conventions and meeting some of the fans, and they felt they're a little too far out for them, and they shied away from it all. But I love them. I think they're great.
Mm-hmm. Now, did most of them remember you from Return of the Living Dead 2 or The Blob, or was it the combination?
From both.
Yeah.
A little combination of both. I was actually more of a commercial kid, which most people don't know because there really isn't an IMDb for commercials. But I did a total of 64 commercials between the time I was 5 and, I guess, 17. And some of those commercials ran for years. In fact, in Canada, I did a series of 12 commercials for their version of shredded wheat called Shreddies. And it's really funny because they did this, like an hour gang, a little rascal gang, and we were a group of kids that all played with the toy and the cereal. Well, they played this commercial, these series of 12 commercials that we did for like 9 years. So it was just kind of comical. They kept playing these commercials, and everyone who watched the commercials was like, these kids are obviously grown up by now. And the first time I ever traveled to Canada, it was like I was a celebrity. I was called Lefty in this little gang of kids. Everyone's like, there's Lefty, there's Lefty, there's Lefty. And I was totally caught off guard. I was like, do you remember that? And they explained to me that it had played for many, many years.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. And now with
That's wild.
Yeah, now with YouTube, you can catch up on a lot of these if you can find them.
Yeah, exactly. I started looking some of them up. I recently found some old VHS and beta with some of the commercials on it, and I'm having a friend of mine digitize them so I can put them online.
Mm-hmm.
But I really started out with commercials. In fact, I didn't even want to be an actor to begin with. It was my sister. She wanted to be an actress. And my mom took her to an agency, and they said, sure, we'll take her, as long as we could have that little kid who's under my husband's desk eating all of his candies. And I was 5 years old at the time, and I looked up, with that caught look, like, oh, you guys can see me here? And then I got my first commercial 5 days later because I was, blonde hair, blue-eyed, all-American looking, and I worked for 12 years straight, nonstop.
No,
I did everything you can imagine.
I went to bring up one because I saw it on your Facebook page, and right away it brought up a bunch of memories for me, and that was for, I remembered as Dr. Dreadful, but I think you were on there before it was even called Dr. Dreadful. It was called...
Yeah, that's right. It was. It was the Mad Scientist Monster Lab, and they had created this Dr. Dreadful character. They hadn't quite named him yet, but he later went on to do many commercials, and he was an animated guy in a scientist outfit.
Uh-huh.
And it was this great kit where you got this plastic skeletal remains, and you put Play-Doh on top of it, and then you dropped it into this vat of baking soda and lime juice and melt all the flesh off. And it was just one of those toys that came out at that time when Scooby-Doo was real popular, so the commercials kind of looked like the Scooby-Doo Haunted Mansion.
Mm-hmm.
And they made me the kid on the box as well as, in the commercial. And my mom was nice enough to actually frame that box for me and put it in a picture that I still have above my door.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's
then
pretty
thanks
awesome.
to you, I YouTubed it, and I found they actually have the commercial on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's great.
I remember that. That was why. And then I believe the Dr. Dreadful ones after that were the edible ones, where you could eat they made food and drinks and.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah, I was surprised once you pointed that out to me. I posted a video on Facebook, and I got a ton of responses from people that were like, I played with that, I loved it, that was my favorite toy, and even I loved it. I mean, I had those for years, but it was one of those things you only use so many times.
Yeah,
It eventually
definitely.
just disintegrated.
Right, like your mask. Yeah.
Exactly, like the mask. But, yeah, I'd worked from the time I was 5, straight on through. I didn't really have time for much schooling, and that's sort of what stopped me, is that I went to college, and I realized that I really hadn't learned anything.
Mm-hmm.
I had set schooling, but I hadn't learned a whole lot, so I got really into school and decided to take my time and learn as much as I possibly could.
Mm-hmm.
And then in college, I started a digital company, and it just took off. We were in the .com days, and it took off, and I just never looked back.
Mm-hmm. No,
yeah.
When the movie came out, were you allowed to go see it at the theater?
Absolutely. In fact, I went with my friend Pete, and he and I went to see it together. And it was really cool walking out of the theater and having people, as I was walking out, turn and look to me and like take a double take and say, "Hey, you're the kid that was just in the movie." But I was a little bit used to that because I did a lot of commercials. And, and when I went to school for, the week here and there or a month here and there, and I went to regular school and I wasn't working, some of the other kids would make fun of me like I did some Orkin commercials, and they'd, make up funny names about pest controls or cockroaches or something like that. And I was kind of used to that. But when I got to the level of actually in movies, it was different. They weren't making fun of me as much as they were, like, taking me seriously.
Yeah. Was that hard to deal with, or was that, cool for you?
It was. It was hard to deal with, to tell you the truth. I didn't really have any preparation for that, and it made me feel a little awkward having people come up to me and act like they knew me and knew all about me. And I was still a kid, so I'm still trying to figure out who I was.
Mm-hmm.
Yet they were certain who I was. So it kind of threw me off balance a little bit. And when I was younger, they offered me the role of Ben Seaver, the younger son in Growing Pains. Mm-hmm. And my parents turned it down because they could see that I was having a little bit of trouble with people coming up to me and wanting autographs. And it didn't make sense to me at the time. Why someone would want an autograph? I guess I was a little too young.
Mm-hmm. And
so they turned that down, so instead they made me the next-door neighbor in Growing Pains, which I did for many, many years. I was the next-door neighbor, Chris Kuzman.
Okay.
And that was a blast. That was one of my favorite times growing up because we always shot Growing Pains at the Warner Brothers Ranch Studios,
mm-hmm.
which meant that there was a bunch of other productions going on at the same time. Now, this is where they also shot Fantasy Island back in the day. And they'd left the Fantasy Island mansion and the lawn in front of the mansion set still set up. And every day around lunchtime, most of the shows would break for lunch around the same time, and we'd all have lunch on the front lawn of the mansion of the Fantasy Island set. So myself and all the other kids from all the other shows would eat real quick and then play hide-and-go-seek throughout the jungle the whole time. And, we're talking about, like, Kirk Cameron and Mila Jovanovic for some reason. I don't even know why she was there, but she was always there. And I'm not sure if she was even in anything. She was there all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And, every other kid that was in a production that had to do with Warner Brothers at that time. And it was those are some of my favorite memories growing up being a child actor.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. They were probably all there just to play in the jungle.
What's that?
They were probably all there just to play in the jungle.
Yeah, exactly. But, it was the jungle part was cool. They left it all intact, and just for that reason, just for catering, just because it was a good open space, and
mm-hmm.
maybe they reused that scenery for something else. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a good time, and then eventually they did a couple spin-offs, like Just the 10 of Us, which I was in, and one other one I think called Coach. But I never did a full-time role. It was always a reoccurring role in the TV shows.
Mm-hmm. That on the commentary of Return of the Living Dead Part 2, the guy kind of plays like the bully role, Thor Van Lingdon.
Thor, exactly.
Yeah, he says that he got in trouble with his parents when he says oh shit line, and I was just wondering if anything like that happened to you, or did your parents?
No, it didn't happen to me, but I do remember him having that kind of trouble. I think his parents were a little bit more strict, and I think he may have come from a smaller town, and I don't think he'd had the background that I did. But I started when I was 5, so I was already, 6 or 7 years into acting.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, you kind of grow up fast.
Mm-hmm.
So my parents had no problem with that whatsoever.
Yeah. Have you seen him recently? Because he says on there he's like 6'7" and 285 pounds or something.
No, I haven't seen him recently. I should, though. I should try and contact him. In fact, Bill suggested recently that I should.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand that he's not very into the convention circuit at the moment. He's not a big fan of the whole conventions, let's say.
Yeah. Did they
to each their own.
Mm-hmm. Did they contact you to be part of the DVD? Like even do
No, they
commentary?
didn't, which might have been my own fault because I wasn't part of any kind of social media, and I didn't have an agent, so I don't think they had any way of getting a hold of me.
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, if you went to IMDb, it doesn't report any of the stuff that I've done. It shows 2 or 3 things. That's it. And it's because I haven't had an agent since I was 17. In fact, what happened, which is a really interesting story, is I was 16, 17 years old, and my sister went to an all-girls school in Hollywood called Immaculate Heart. And they did plays and musicals every, semester, and they were always short boys. So I got, invited over there to be part of one of their plays and musicals, and I loved it. So me and my friend would go, and we'd always play 3 or 4 roles in their plays and musicals, and we each had at least 2 girlfriends that knew about each other and didn't mind, and we were having the time of our lives. And I was cast as Brian Austin Green's role in Beverly Hills 90210.
Mm-hmm.
And I had told Aaron Spelling, yes, I'll do it. And it was a couple of days before I actually had to sign the contract. They sent it over, and it was a 6-year contract. And I was getting scared. I was thinking, wow, this is all I've ever done since I was 5 years old. I think I want to take a break. I want to do these plays and musicals and hang out with all these girls and have fun and just kind of lead a normal life for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, I had no idea 90210 was going to turn out to be what it was. But I called my agent and I told her, I was like, I think I've changed my mind. I don't think I want to join this series. At this point, I was old enough to make up my own mind, unlike with Growing Pains when my parents decided for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I called her and I told her, and she was aghast. She was just beside herself. I mean, I think I could hear her crying on the other end. And she gave me Aaron Spelling's number, and she told me that she would not call him and that I had to call him myself. So I called from the payphone of the high school, and one of my good friends, C.B. Spencer, who is an actress now, a Broadway and a Hollywood actress, she was standing next to me, and I called from the payphone of this high school, and I was put on hold, and I eventually got through to Aaron Spelling, and I told him, I'm like, I'm sorry, sir, I've changed my mind. I've decided that 6 years is too much of a commitment for me right now. I want to just kind of lead a normal life and maybe go to college. And the guy read me the riot act. He literally told me I would never work for him again in this town. The atypical "you'll never work in this town again" speech.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I got all these giggling girls around me, and I think that he thought that I was not taking it seriously because they were just laughing and giggling, and they couldn't believe that I was on the phone with Aaron Spelling at this payphone at their high school. And I don't think he understood the context, so he maybe felt insulted or something. I don't know. But he ended up kind of being right. I didn't really act much beyond that.
Do you think was it anything he did? Did he put you on the ban list?
I don't think he put me on any kind of blacklist,
Yeah.
but he did scare me.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully now that blacklist is, buried with him, but I just didn't pursue it after that. I got really lucky in college and started a .com that was so successful, I never really looked back.
Mm-hmm. Do you regret it at all, or are you happy with the decision?
Pardon me?
Do you regret not doing the show at all?
Well, I don't. Mm-hmm. I don't, because a lot of my friends that I grew up with, I grew up with the Coreys, I grew up with a lot of actors that some of them turned out to be great. Some of them turned out not to be so great. And having started at such a young age, I wasn't sure which way my life was going to head. and I needed some perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And a break was exactly what was right for me. And if I hadn't taken a break, maybe I would have ended up as, one of those burnouts, or maybe I would have ended up on drugs, or, or even worse, one of those guys with trying to be an actor really hard and not succeeding.
Mm-hmm.
But I left on top. I left in demand, and I left without, feeling like I was a failure. And I left with some integrity, and I got my life. And I also left on the cusp of becoming really famous. Had I done 90210, I then would have been famous.
Mm-hmm.
And I left before that happened, so I kind of got a break. I think it was probably one of the better decisions of my life.
Mm-hmm.
So at the same time, if I could be dating Megan Fox right now, hey. Then again, I do regret that part.
Right. You said you did like a successful.com. Did you want to tell everybody what that is?
Well, at the time, no one was making DVDs, and I'd met a guy in an English pub, and he'd asked me if I knew how to make DVDs.
Mm-hmm.
And now you can buy a Mac and make a DVD, but back then in 1999, 2000, no one could make DVDs. You had to buy a really expensive systems and do some serious, technological wizardry.
Mm-hmm.
And I, of course, just said, yeah, I can do it, no problem. So the guy handed me a stack of beta tapes, and he says, here, take all these tapes and make a new movie out of them and put them on DVD. You got 3 weeks. And I was like, no problem. Well, I'll get it to you. It took me about 5.5 weeks, but we got it done. And it worked out so well, we ended up putting out about a DVD a day for 3.5 years for a number of companies until it became that almost anyone can make DVDs, until they started making computers that had DVD makers in them.
Yeah.
And then the business kind of fell out beneath us, and it kind of was over overnight.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I just kind of decided to move on. I'm a third-generation inventor, in fact. My grandfather helped invent the Muppets with Jim Henson, and he invented all the animatronics for It's a Small World in
that's
Disneyland.
pretty sweet. Yeah.
Yeah, and he invented the alarm system. What is it now? I forgot what the company is named now, but he invented the alarm system and sold it to a company that is still in business to this day.
Mm-hmm.
And he used that money to move to California, and then he became a sound mixer, and he invented a bunch of the sound mixing equipment that to this day is still used.
Wow.
And so my father and my uncles all, tried their hand in inventing, and they never really got that far with it. But I also had the natural-born itch, and I've invented a whole number of products over my life, and I've got quite a few out there right now. And my latest one is actually in Walmart, and it's slowly getting into every Walmart worldwide, called Paw Prints. And it's a game for kids where you put these animal tracks on the ground and you step on them and you act like the animals that you're stepping on as you step on them.
Mm-hmm.
So the board game is actually your floor, your room, or your stairs, or your table. And I just love it. And it's kind of always been my passion, is inventing and writing. And so I written a book, and I got a comedy book published, and I got an invention off the ground right after my .com, so I kind of just ran with that for several years. And then I started another tech business, and now I'm just doing a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm. You're like a real life Dr. Dreadful now.
Yeah, it's true. A friend of mine does call me a mad scientist, and it's how I feel. I'm currently obviously working on lots of other inventions, but my latest one, of course, is the one I think is the best one ever, which I think about with everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But I have my own little doctor's lab suit outfit that I sometimes wear just to get myself in the mood. But yeah, I'm definitely a mad scientist. There's no doubt about it. Mm-hmm. But having run into Bill and found out about these conventions and found out about all these fans out there, and when I joined Facebook, I mean, I must have had thousands of people, friend request me in less than a few months, and I was just shocked. And I'm all about it. I mean, if this makes people happy, why not? Is what I say.
What were your thoughts on the director, Ken Wiederhorn?
He was a good guy. He was very mature and professional, and he was always very mature and professional, and he pushed us hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was times when I felt like he tried to, push us in a good way to get the best out of us.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll never forget there was one scene they ended up having to cut a lot of the dialogue out of, and it's when I run in the house and I pick up the phone and I say, call the Army, call the Navy, call the police, call the National Guard, call whoever you want.
Mm-hmm.
And there was like a whole page of dialogue, and it was just a little bit too much for an 11-year-old. And they spent hours and hours and hours trying to get me to get all the words out correctly, and I just couldn't. For some reason, maybe it was just a bad day, maybe I was tired, maybe the dialogue was too much, and they ended up just cutting that scene down to a few lines instead of, all the lines he had, and I think they expected a little bit more out of me when it came to that.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't understand that, maybe kids can't do a full page of dialogue as easily as an adult can, let's say. Other than that, I love the guy. He was a great role model, in fact. He was very encouraging and nice.
Mm-hmm. What about, like, the other actors on the set? Like, all the veteran actors, were they all cool with you?
Really cool, especially the guys that were in the James Karen and Tom Matthews that were in the original one.
Yeah.
They were funny. They had come back, and they were just a barrel of laughs. They always kind of had like a little step up on everyone because they had been in the previous one.
Uh-huh.
And as far as the other actors, it was mostly kids, and I guess my sister, and then was it Dana Ashbrook? Was it him? He went on to have a career, didn't he? He was in Twin Peaks or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't actually stay in touch with them very much. I remember them all being very nice to me and getting along well with them. But we didn't stay that much in touch.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't as much social media as there is today, but if there was then, I'm sure we'd probably all still be talking on a regular basis.
Yeah. John, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'd just like to know what was your favorite horror movie growing up?
Ooh, probably The Shining. It scared me the most. That was the first movie that scared the living bejesus out of me. And it's not even necessarily the scariest film.
Yeah.
There's just some psychological element to it that got to me.
That was definitely one that freaked me out, too.
Mm-hmm.
But the very original, was it Night of the Living Dead, the black and white one?
Mm-hmm.
That's a really scary film.
Yeah.
And I remember watching that and thinking, wow, this is scary.
Uh-huh. And
then comparing that to Return of the Living Dead 2, which was sort of, a pioneer in the sense that it was a comedy horror film.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, although there was other ones, there wasn't a lot of those.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that the producer and the director had a little bit of trouble, getting that greenlit. But it was great. I mean, now the 80s are known for these campy films.
Yeah.
They define the 80s.
Mm-hmm. And they kind of made a comeback, too, slash movies and, like, the comedy horror movies over the last few years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're exactly right. Which, it's another thing that surprised me. It's just what I come back and how much people really love them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I kind of felt like a fan until I went to these signings and realized that I was on the other side of the table.
Yeah.
I would have been on the other side talking to some of these people and getting their autographs, but no, they wanted me to sit on the other side and sign. I'm like, okay.
I'm sure you can walk around if you...
Yeah, true. But it was weird. I mean, there were some people that would, I wanted to sign, what do you want me to sign? What do you want me to write? I'll write whatever. And then there were some people like, just put your name. Just put your name. And it took me about a half an hour to figure out, these are the eBayers. Mm. Oh, I get it.
Oh.
And some people wanted me to write to, and, they're to whomever and whatever else I liked. But others were just write your name. And then some of the people sitting at the table, I don't know, some of the people sitting at the table, I mean, they'd been wearing masks throughout the whole movie. Mm-hmm. Yet they've been doing these conventions for years. And I thought to myself, wow, they didn't even show their real face, yet there is an audience out there for them.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of struck me as, well, I was actually in the movie. And maybe I ought to go to some of these conventions and check it out.
Mm-hmm. We normally ask the people if anyone's asked them to sign anything weird, but you haven't been to the convention yet. But did anyone ask you to sign anything unusual at the book signing?
It wasn't unusual. It was an unusual man. He was a nice guy, and he knew everything about me. He knew a lot about my sister, who never ended up being an actress. He knew that my sister and I once did a game show when we were little kids called I'm Telling. He'd known about a commercial, a McDonald's commercial I did that took 5 days to shoot, and as far as my mom and I were concerned, never aired. And he's seen it. He remembered it. And he's like, well, according to my calculations, you've done 63 commercials, and if you count that one where you were an extra and they bumped you up to a principal, you've done 64. And I was just shocked that there was somebody that knew this. Because my mom and I couldn't figure out how many commercials I did. And there was a stranger who knew. And that shocked me. And he brought in a box of material. He brought in stuff from the Blob, stuff from Growing Pains, something from General Hospital. And he was prepared. He had me sign it all. And I was like, wow, I mean, I barely notified them I was going to be here a few days ago. And you're prepared, man.
He was waiting for the day that you'd show up.
Yeah, so I guess from what I've heard, there are a lot of people out there like that. And some people have the constitution for it. They don't mind it, and some people do mind it. But I don't. I say the more the merrier. Bring it on. I just love it.
What was your favorite zombie in the movie?
Probably Brian Peck. He was the one who played Michael Jackson.
Yeah, we've had him on the show. Really good guy.
Yeah, he's a cool guy. I liked him a lot. In fact, I ran into him at the book signing, and it was great. We went to dinner afterwards and hung out all night long. And he's just a cool cat. And the whole Michael Jackson thing was kind of spur of the moment, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think that's what he told us.
I think he kind of came up with the director, and they were like, yeah, let's just try this. And it just worked out. And it's a memorable scene, right? Many people remember that.
Oh, definitely. Now, there's a lot of CGI in movies now, so they might be on a set and there might not really be all zombies there. But when you did this, there's all these people dressed as zombies all around. Just like, what was that like to be there with all these people?
Yeah, it's funny you mention that, because this was a pre-CGI. I mean, there was some CGI. I remember them talking about adding lightning and how it took months and it cost a fortune to add lightning to all these scenes. But the rest was done with real makeup and real actors. It took, 5 hours to get prepared to put their outfits together. And by that time I would then show up on set and they'd been there for 5 hours getting their makeup done. And it was kind of scary when we did the mausoleum scenes in the beginning, because we were at a real graveyard. And they had done a really good job, making it scary. And when we had some time off, the kids and I would run around and check out these old gravestones from 1865 and whatnot, and you realize this isn't just a set, this is real. And that part was spooky. And then in the end of the movie, we were shooting in Valencia, and they had probably, it's hard to tell, maybe 40 to 60, maybe even more zombies. And this is when we're electrocuting them all in the end. And every once in a while, we were shooting at night, you'd look up, and you'd see all these zombies all around you. And it would just kind of catch you. It'd just be spooky for a moment. And you have to remind yourself, oh, okay, we're shooting something. This is not for real.
Yeah.
But it would, there were so many of them. That's when it got scary, when there was like a horde. So like one of those current zombie movies, when you look out and there's a horde of zombies in the parking lot. That's what would freak you out.
Yeah.
And it was also kind of cool where they used some sort of dough and like marinara sauce for brains. And that's what we'd throw out in the back of the truck at the zombies. And after a while, you'd get late at night, you'd get tired, and it just got kind of a little spooky.
Were you ever tempted to taste one of the brains?
Yes, I did. I had to.
Yeah,
absolutely. As a kid.
Yeah.
By all means, You know, it didn't taste like much. It just tasted like dough and sauce. And you're like, okay, it's not so bad.
Yeah.
And I just wondered whose job it was to make all this stuff.
The brain makers.
Yeah, who's the brain maker in all this?
I think in the original movie, what they said was they actually used real animal brains, and they would like give the extras like an extra $50 if they would eat them.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Really?
That's what they said.
I didn't know that.
It's pretty messed up.
But you know what? People would do it.
Yeah.
I mean, extras will do anything. I've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
For 50 extra bucks, I believe it.
Did they? Were you approached to be in the third movie or in any of the other sequels?
Nope, wasn't approached. And I wish I was approached for the DVD commentary. I really wish I was. But it could have been my fault, like I said, because I just wasn't really, very reachable.
Yeah.
I guess there's always Blu-ray.
Yeah, you got those coming out now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Maybe now that I'm, back online, maybe then the Blu-ray comes around, there's a chance. Because I had a lot of, comments I could add. In fact, I have a lot of pictures I had found after meeting Bill and going to the book signing. I pulled out my old scrapbook and sent him a couple dozen pictures from behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize I had so many tucked away in storage.
I mean, there's been a lot of talk about the movies just recently. Like, there's a book that came out, it's like of the history of all the whole franchise. So I could
this
see
Saturday we're starting the documentary. In fact,
really,
yeah, we're doing the documentary of the Return of the Living Dead series, and starting 8 a.m. on Saturday morning.
Oh, that's pretty sweet. Do you know who's making that?
Yeah, I don't know all the people involved at the moment. Yeah, I don't know all the names. I know Bill and Evolution Management is involved. Mm-hmm. And who else was it? Let me see. Where's my messages?
Should be pretty cool, though, once it does come out.
Yeah. I was just wondering if it was that, the people that did the Nightmare on Elm Street one did such a great job.
Never Sleep Again.
Well, Bill worked on that. Bill Philpott worked on that, and it turned out great. And it's the same people behind that one that are doing this one, the exact same people.
Oh, man.
And,
awesome.
Yeah, I heard that one was awesome. I haven't seen it yet. I guess I should either try and look for it online. I mean, where do you find that? Didn't it air on TV?
They had a website. It was neversleepagain.com, I believe, and they're selling.
We have one of the directors on. Yeah. You could buy it right off there. I think you could even just get off Amazon.
Yeah, I imagine.
Oh, okay. I know one of the producer's name is Michael Perez. He sent me an email with the call time and all that. Mm-hmm. But I've yet to actually meet with everyone. I'll know a lot more on Saturday. I'll tell you that much.
All right. He's a good guy, too. He set up a lot of interviews with us.
Okay, so you know who he is?
Yeah.
Okay, so whoever he works with, it sounds like it's his usual suspects and those people working on this project.
Yeah,
they spent weeks building sets this time. They said they learned from doing the Nightmare on Elm Street one that it was just a lot better to build sets, and as opposed to how they'd done it before in previous projects.
I think they used a lot of green screen or something like that on the Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, maybe that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this time they built actual sets, and I guess I'll find out. I'm just, a lot of these things, I would just do it for the opportunity. Mm-hmm. And this is one of those things as well, where it's like, sure, will you want me there? And they wanted to know if I wanted something for it. I'm like, of course not. Just, tell me when to be there. I'll be there.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. I'm really looking forward to that right now. Yeah. I just want to know, there's a scene in the car there, and there's a zombie hand, and there's I think probably 5 or 6 people in the car. Was that hard to film because there's so many people in there and it looks pretty tight, it's not like...
We shot it a lot. I think we spent three or 4 days on that scene, and we did a lot of extra angles, and they had rigged up the car where it was being towed. So it wasn't as hard as you might think it would be, because they had those camera rigs that you've probably seen before, where if you're towing a car, it looks like the car is actually driving, but it's actually being towed. Right. And then just outside the car, they have... a director's seat and for a camera and for a director and for the cameraman. So it wasn't really as hard as it might appear. Mm-hmm. But that was actually a lot of fun. If you couldn't help but laugh, with a bunch of people in the car playing hot potato with a hand that was moving.
Right.
But, back then they actually had to make these items. It wasn't CGI, so it just, you got to give credit to these guys. They really, that was movie magic.
Mm-hmm.
That was the generation that had to make it.
Yeah, that always stands out to me too. Is, you know, when you watch a movie, a lot of ones from the '80s where it's a real special effects, they have like a charm to them, and it's just to me, it's a lot more fun to see.
I totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree. I remember when they redid or when they eventually redid Star Wars, and they came out with the director's cut with the added scenes and all that with the new CGI. I was like, I don't know. I still kind of like the original.
Yeah.
It didn't do a whole lot for me. I did like seeing a few extra new scenes, but
I don't want to
do too much for me.
I don't want to see a CGI Jabba the Hutt stuck in there.
Yeah, totally. You know, it didn't seem real. I didn't like the Jabba the Hutt scene with Han Solo in the hangar.
Yeah.
I was like, that didn't really add much for me.
The original Jabba the Hutt looks way better.
Way better. Way better. In fact, I never thought of him as a mobile person, and they show him, walking around, walking up the hall, and you're like, I don't know, it kind of goes against the image.
Yeah, he gained a lot of weight over the years. He's like...
True.
Yeah. Then they also make, Greedo shoot hand first, and just a lot of
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm. It's not
there's a lot of things they do differently, but nowadays I understand they can pretty much just... Well, I mean, we've all seen it in movies where, like Tron, for example, where they've taken, what's his name, the main actor, the man, and they've superimposed his young face on his old body, and you're like, wow, that's just amazing.
Mm-hmm. They think eventually they might be able to just make a movie with, like, a, deceased actor.
Yeah.
I've read articles where they can do that. They can take someone who's dead and put their face and superimpose them. I mean, I understand with Black Swan, they superimposed Natalie Portman's face right over the actress doing the dancing.
Yeah, that's like a big controversy right now because she's not happy about it, like that she didn't get any credit.
Yeah, I guess that's how I found out about it. Yeah, it's too bad. I hate when people do that. I think people should just, I don't know. What can you do?
Yeah, I read that's how they're going to do the new, they're making a prequel to the Planet of the Apes, and for the first time they're not going to be people in monkey suits. They're doing that technology where it'll be like actual monkeys or superposed monkeys on people. I don't know. It's going to be pretty crazy.
Wow. Well, in that particular case, that might be really cool.
Yeah, that's probably good use for it.
Yeah, that's the kind of, perfect use, because the monkey movement is really hard to match.
Yeah.
And that might add a sense of realism. So, I mean, everything has its place, right?
Yeah. There's just sometimes they overuse it.
That's for sure.
That's kind of like when you say about the hordes of zombies, because like in a movie like Return of the Living Dead or Return of the Living Dead Part 2, and you see the hordes of zombies and they're real people, like it's cool, but now that's really cool. But like on some of the newer ones where it's like a horde of like 1 million zombies, it's just it's kind of unrealistic, and I don't think it's as scary.
You got a good point. That's exactly it. And when you know they're real people too, and they're all dressed up like that, and it's in the middle of the night, there's some scariness to it. There's no doubt about it.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. What was we talked about the blob a little bit because you kept some of the frozen blob pieces. What was like the whole experience of filming the blob?
The blob was great because there was no audition process for me. At that time, there wasn't a lot of child actors. We all knew each other, too. I mean, from Stephen Dorff to all the other kids that were doing child acting. There was a small circle. Unlike today, it was probably thousands, and every commercial and TV show is probably a cattle call. It would only be, 1 in a dozen that was a cattle call. But for that particular movie, I never really had to audition. They just called me and told me I had the role. And I was like, okay, great. When do I start?
Yeah.
And I loved it because I got to work with Kevin Dillon and Shawnee Smith, and Kevin Dillon was kind of a badass at the time. And I remember running into him years later at a gas station when I had my .com, and I was walking across the street because my business was across the street, and he was getting gas. And he asked me what I was up to, and I told him I had .com and I wasn't into acting. He's like, well, whatever you do, just stay out of acting, man. Just keep doing what you're doing. And I thought to myself, really? Okay. And then, lo and behold, his career took off.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's doing great.
Mm-hmm.
But I also don't think these people would necessarily remember me. I don't have any, illusions of grandeur that if I ran into them on the street, they'd be like, "Hey, Mike." Although I do look the same, which is kind of funny.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely do. I was signing the Facebook there. I read online, I don't know how true it is or not, but it said that like Shawnee Smith was like your first crush.
Well, maybe on a first crush in life, I certainly did have a big crush on her.
Yeah.
I remember it was a moment where she's one of those people that would kiss people on the cheek, and just, real naturally.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe where she's from, people gave a lot of hugs. And I'll never forget, I even have a picture of this, where I knew she was going to go kiss me on the cheek, because she always did. And so I just turned my face real quick and made her kiss me on the lips real briefly. And she was shocked, and I was laughing. And I made sure someone had the Polaroid ready, and I had a picture of it. But I couldn't help it. I mean, she's beautiful.
Yeah.
And what can you do? What boy wouldn't?
I always think that's a really underrated movie, is a remake of The Blob. I always thought it was really good special effects, and just a cool film. As a fan of your own movies, I guess, which do you like better, Return of the Living Dead 2 or The Blob?
I like Return of the Living Dead 2 better, just because there was just more involvement on my part. I was had a bigger role. There was much more involved, much more special effects that were on hand as opposed to The Blob, which had a little bit more CGI.
Mm-hmm.
And also there was we spent more time shooting. But at the same time with The Blob, we got to go to Louisiana, and we spent a lot of time in a small town called Abbeville, Louisiana. Mm-hmm. And the town really embraced me. They had me come to each of the schools and talk to the kids. And the only thing to do in the town was they used to make something, whether it was steel or copper, and that plant had closed down. So there wasn't a whole lot going on in this town except a skating rink.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever I, had some time off, I'd go to the skating rink, and then they'd announce that I was there. And then within about an hour, every kid in town would be there.
Uh-huh.
And it was kind of neat. They really did embrace me, and it kind of felt neat. So we'd skate around, and I remember at the time Salt and Pepper's Push It was real popular, and they'd be playing that, and I'd be skating, and there'd be all these different girls trying to vie for my attention, and good times.
Oh, yeah.
Good times.
That's pretty awesome. Is there,
I mean, as far as child acting goes, I had a really good career, and I didn't have a point where I was trying and failing.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of walked away on top, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Was there any scenes that you did in any of your movies that really stick with you, that was fun to film?
A lot of them were fun to film. In Return of the Living Dead, it was really fun to film the scene where I got to ram the truck through the wall and then climb out of it and then go inside and stab Thor in the mouth with the screwdriver. That whole experience, that's why you're dead-ass wife, no brains and a big mouth. That was just fun. That was a blast. In fact, there was broken glass everywhere, and I got a little piece in my eye, and they had to, take me to the medic and get it removed. But that was really fun, and it was also really fun when we were in the meat packing van, and we were throwing meat out the back of the van for the zombies, and they were all chasing us. And we were, I think, in Sierra Madre, small town in Southern California, and that was also a lot of fun. I mean, it was all fun, but those scenes in particular I really liked.
Mm-hmm. So, real quick, too, because on the commentary he said that your stunt double was an adult. Was he a little person, or how did that work?
That's exactly right. Yeah. We actually look quite a lot alike, and he's a really nice guy. We became good friends during the shooting, and he was exactly my height, but he was 35 years old.
Yeah.
Like Ralph Macchio style, I guess.
Yeah.
Or maybe more Emmanuel Lewis.
Right, yeah. I don't think Ralph Macchio's that short.
Yeah, I don't think he is either. I just think he looked young. I think that was his thing.
Mm-hmm.
But, more of a Emmanuel Lewis type thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Brian ran into him, Brian Peck. He was telling me a story when we were at dinner that he ran into him years later, and, she caught up with him, and he was still doing the same thing, doing stunt doubles for kids.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'll let everybody know again. Let's see, July 1st through the 3rd, Indianapolis, Indiana. You're going to be at the Days of the Dead Horror Convention. And they keep announcing new people. It's a pretty awesome lineup. And, of course, John and I will be there, too. But, I'm sure no one cares about that. But you go to daysofthedead.net, where you can click there's a giant banner right on the website. So if you can't spell anything, you can just click right there, and it'll take you there like magic. And I want to thank you for coming on tonight. And everyone,
thank you for having me.
Yeah, first appearance at a convention, so everyone's going to come and see you.
That's great. I look forward to meeting you guys. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, man.
This is PJ Souls, and you are totally listening to Without Your Head Horror Radio.